I always believed family milestones were meant to bring people together to remind us of the bond that held us through years of good and bad. That's why when my parents' 35th wedding anniversary rolled around, I imagined a warm, glittering evening where my children would laugh with their grandparents and we'd all toast to decades of love. Instead, that night became the beginning of an unraveling I never saw coming. Marcel's, the most expensive restaurant in town, glowed with chandeliers that scattered light across marble floors. The air carried the faint clink of champagne flutes and the murmur of conversations. As Mark parked the car, I glanced at the back seat. Emma, my 8-year-old, carefully guarded her watercolor painting, 35 Years of Love, written in looping letters across the top. Sophie, only 5, clutched her clay figurines of Grandma and Grandpa, her little fingers wrapped around them like they might fly away. I smiled despite my nerves. This is what family is supposed to feel like. We walked into Marcel's right at 7 o'clock. For a moment, I let myself admire the space: velvet chairs, fresh roses on every table, waiters in crisp white shirts gliding like dancers across the stage. My girls whispered in awe, their eyes wide. Then a sharp voice cut through the glamour. "Excuse me." A woman in a black suit stepped forward, blocking our path. She didn't even look at me, her gaze fixed on my daughters like they were intruders. "I'm sorry, but children are not permitted at this event. This is an adults-only celebration." I froze. My smile collapsed, replaced by a chill running up my spine. There must be some mistake. "We're here for Robert and Linda's anniversary party. I'm their daughter." I fumbled through my purse, pulling out the invitation. "See nothing about children not being allowed." She barely glanced at it, her tone cold, rehearsed. "I understand your confusion, but the party organizer specifically requested no children be admitted." My heart pounded. "The party organizers are my parents," I said louder, anger cracking my voice. Heads were turning, eyes burning into my back, but I didn't care. They know I have children. They invited us. That's when I heard the familiar voice behind me, smooth, calm, smug. "Jess, what's going on?" I turned, and there she was, my sister Hannah, 31 years old, the golden child, effortlessly stunning, in a sleek black dress that looked like it came straight off a runway. She floated forward with that practiced smile that had always charmed everyone except me. Hannah, relief and frustration collided in my chest. "They're saying kids aren't allowed, but Mom and Dad invited us. Tell her there's been a mistake." Her eyes flicked to Emma and Sophie, then back to me. And then that smile deepened just enough to sting. "Oh, Jess, this party really is adults only. I thought you knew." The words landed like ice water. "What, nobody told me that?" She shrugged lightly, the kind of shrug that dismissed entire histories. "I just assumed you wouldn't come. You never liked big parties anyway." My voice shook, fury and disbelief tangled together. I called Mom twice. I confirmed everything. "The girls made gifts." "Look around," Hannah interrupted, gesturing elegantly toward the glass doors. Beyond them, the party glittered tables filled with polished adults waiters, balancing trays of champagne. Not a child in sight. And at the center, my parents sat like royalty at their head table. Dad caught my eye and waved almost casually, but neither he nor Mom rose to come over. My stomach dropped. "This is unbelievable," I whispered. Hannah leaned down, her perfume sweet but suffocating. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Mark can take the girls home. You come back, enjoy yourself. Problem solved." Emma's grip tightened on her painting. Sophie's lip quivered as she hugged her clay figurines tighter. And then Hannah's voice sharpened, her smile fading into steel. "Girls, I'm sorry, but nobody really needs those little drawings and craft projects tonight. This is a party for adults with real gifts. You can throw those away on your way out." The words sliced through me. Sophie's small face crumpled, tears spilling as she pressed her figurines against her chest. Emma's chin trembled, my brave girl trying to hold it in, but her eyes shone with heartbreak. I looked toward my parents again, desperate, hoping, "Do something, please." But they just sat there watching, silent. Something inside me cracked wide open. The humiliation burned hotter than the chandeliers above, hotter than every jealous glance I'd swallowed when Hannah got special treatment growing up. But this was different. This was my children. I bent down, my voice firm, though my throat felt raw. Girls were leaving, right now. I straightened and met Hannah's amused eyes. "You wanted me gone. Congratulations. You got what you wanted." Mark wrapped his arm around my shoulders as we turned. The girls clung to their gifts, tears streaking their cheeks. My chest ached, but my rage burned brighter with every step toward the door. Mark whispered, "Are you okay?" "No," I said, my voice trembling with both fury and clarity. "But I will be." As the heavy restaurant doors shut behind us, the laughter from inside was muffled to a faint echo. I knew I had just crossed an invisible line in my family, and deep down I also knew there would be no going back. The drive home felt like punishment. The car was too quiet except for the occasional sniffle from the back seat. Street lights swept across Emma's pale face, her gaze fixed out the window, while Sophie hugged her figurines like they might disappear if she let go. I pressed my hands together in my lap, nails digging into my skin to keep from shaking. Mark kept glancing at me, concern etched across his face, but he knew better than to speak just yet. The silence itself was a wound we were all bleeding from. Then, in a tiny voice that made my chest ache, Sophie whispered, "Mommy, why didn't Aunt Hannah like our presents?" I turned around. Her big brown eyes brimmed with tears. Her clay figurines clutched so tight her knuckles were white. Emma stayed quiet, but a single tear rolled down her cheek, betraying her brave front. I swallowed hard, forcing calm into my voice. "Sweetheart, your presents are beautiful. Aunt Hannah was just being cruel. That's not okay, and it doesn't mean what you made isn't special." "But she said they were ugly," Sophie mumbled. Mark's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His knuckles whitened, his jaw clenched, but his voice was steady. "You listen to us, girls. What you made is priceless. That's what matters." I took a breath, pushing through the knot in my throat. "When we get home, Emma's painting is going up in the living room. And Sophie's figurines, they're going right on the fireplace mantel. That way everyone who comes into our house will see how amazing they are." For the first time since we left the restaurant, Sophie's lips twitched into a small, hopeful smile. Emma blinked fast, the tears finally slowing. "And you know what?" I added, glancing at Mark. "How about we stop for pizza on the way home? We'll have our own celebration. Just us." The girls perked up at that nodding quickly, and for a moment I saw the faint glow of joy return to their little faces. Tony's Pizza was a cozy place tucked on a corner with red checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic that clung to the air. We slid into a booth, and slowly the tension began to lift. Tony himself came over, as he often did when we visited, and asked Emma what she was holding. She proudly showed him her painting, and he made a big fuss over her talent. Sophie shyly showed him her figurines, and he bent down low, declaring them the best grandparents he'd ever seen. The girls giggled. The pain of earlier fading, if only for a little while. When we finally got home, we carried out the promise. Emma's painting took its place above the living room couch, and Sophie carefully arranged her figurines on the mantel. The girls stepped back to admire them like they were priceless treasures. To me, they were. Later, after bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, the house fell quiet. Mark and I collapsed onto the couch. My eyes kept drifting to the painting above us. My throat tightened all over again. Mark's arm wrapped around me. "I can't believe your family." His voice was low, like he was afraid if he spoke too loud, the whole night would shatter all over again. That was when the dam broke. The tears I had held back for the girls came flooding hot and furious. "They humiliated our children, Mark. My own sister, told them their gifts were trash, and my parents just sat there and watched." He pulled me close. I know, it was cruel. I pulled away, suddenly wiping at my wet cheeks with shaking hands. "Do you know what makes it worse?" Mark looked at me carefully, already suspecting where I was headed. "We spent an entire year renovating that lake house for them. Do you remember how many weekends we drove out there? How many nights we painted and sanded and planned? We were supposed to surprise them tonight. That was going to be their anniversary gift." Mark's face darkened with the memory. The little 3-bedroom cottage by the water had become our second life for months. Every decision had been made with my parents in mind: granite counters, fishing dock, cozy guest rooms. "It was Dad's dream," I whispered, staring at my hands. Every time we rented that house, he'd say how perfect it would be to retire there. And we were going to give it to them, hand them the keys tonight. That was supposed to be the moment we finally showed them how much I've tried to make them proud. The silence between us deepened heavy as stone. Mark finally spoke. "Jess, maybe it's better they don't get it." I looked up at him, startled. "They don't deserve it," he said simply. "Not after what they did tonight." I exhaled shakily. A part of me resisted the dutiful daughter inside, still begging to be heard. But another part, the part burned raw, from seeing my children cry, nodded silently. Mark touched my hand. "Maybe this isn't just about them anymore. Maybe this is about us. about drawing a line. I leaned back against the couch, staring at Emma's painting hanging proudly above. And in that moment, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding all my life. I had been chasing their approval for decades, and they had just shown me how little it meant to them. The lake house was supposed to be their gift. Now, maybe it would be something else. I didn't know what exactly, but as I wiped the last of my tears and held Mark's hand tighter, one thing was certain: I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. By morning, the humiliation hadn't dulled, it had sharpened. Every time I looked at Emma's painting above the couch, or Sophie's figurines on the mantel, my chest twisted tighter. The betrayal wasn't just about last night. It was about years of me giving, accommodating, trying to win their love, and being reminded again and again that it was conditional. So I did the one thing I knew would make them listen. I turned on my laptop. Scrolling through the photos we'd taken of the lake house renovations, my hands trembled, but my decision felt clear. There it was, the sparkling granite counters, the deck overlooking the water, the cozy bedrooms we'd poured ourselves into. Each picture carried the weight of weekends spent sanding, painting, repairing each hour stolen from our kids' playtime, because I thought the sacrifice would be worth it. I began typing each word, punching through years of swallowed pride. This beautiful lake house could have been my parents' 35th anniversary gift tonight. My husband and I spent an entire year renovating it, knowing how much my dad always dreamed of retiring near the water. But last night, my children were humiliated, told their handmade gifts were trash. My parents sat and watched as my sister reduced them to tears. That's when I realized they don't deserve this. My kids come first. Always. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. Then, almost recklessly, I hit post. Within an hour, the notifications exploded. Comments poured in: friends, coworkers, even acquaintances who had only seen the perfect family I always pretended to have. Sympathy, outrage, a chorus of strangers validating what I already knew: my children deserved better. But with the support came the storm. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. 37 missed calls, dozens of texts. My voicemail filled so fast it stopped accepting new messages. The first was my mother, her voice shaky. "Betty, honey, please, call me back. This is a misunderstanding. You know how your sister jokes. Please don't be angry with us." The next, Hannah. "Jess, you're blowing this way out of proportion. If you'd stayed 5 more minutes, you would have understood what was going on. You can't just post things like that online." Her tone was honey laced with poison, her words slippery. And then my father controlled, clipped but simmering with anger underneath. "Betty, I saw what you posted. This is childish. We need to talk like adults. Call me back immediately." I deleted them all. And then I did something I should have done years ago. I opened my banking app, navigated to the automatic transfer of $500 I'd been sending my parents every month, and hit cancel. Just like that, the lifeline they'd come to expect was severed. The memory of another request flashed in my mind: Hannah just weeks earlier asking me for $2,000 to take graphic design courses. I'd actually considered it as an early birthday gift. My hand curled into a fist. Never again. Mark appeared in the doorway, watching me with cautious eyes. "You're really cutting them off." I met his gaze steady now. They cut themselves off the moment they let our daughters cry. The afternoon dragged with more calls, texts, notifications. I muted everything. The girls needed normalcy, so we baked cookies together, their laughter filling the house as the sweet smell spread through the kitchen. For a few precious hours, the chaos outside our walls couldn't reach us. But peace never lasts long in my family. That evening, as we pulled into our driveway after a walk, my stomach sank. Parked out front was my parents' car. My mother stood on the porch holding a large cake box. My father's hands were buried in his pockets, his face unreadable. "Oh no," I whispered. Mark's voice was low. "Do you want me to handle this?" "No," I said, my throat tightening. "This is mine." As soon as my mother spotted us, she hurried forward, her eyes damp. "Betty, honey, we brought cake for the girls. We know they worked so hard on those beautiful gifts." Her words might have sounded sweet, but I could taste the guilt underneath, the way she was already rewriting history. I stopped several feet away, crossing my arms. "Really?" "Because last night Hannah told them their gifts belonged in the trash, and you just sat there." My father stepped up, his expression firm, almost scolding. "Betty, there's no need to drag this out. Everyone saw your post. The house you've made this into a spectacle. We should calm down and start over." "Start over?" My laugh came out sharp, bitter. "You think this is small? You let my sister humiliate my children, and now you want to start over like nothing happened." My mother tried again, her voice trembling but coaxing. Why don't we go inside, have some cake? This weekend, maybe we can drive out to the country, see our new house together. And there it was, the slip, the assumption that the lake house, my gift, was still theirs. I felt the fury rise a fire I couldn't hold back anymore. Your house, no. It's mine, Mark's and mine. And last night you made sure it stays that way. My father's face reddened. Betty, don't be ridiculous. That house would be perfect for family gatherings. I've always dreamed of fishing there. I lifted my chin. Then you should have thought about that before you let your grandchildren cry on a marble floor while you sip champagne. Silence pressed down like a storm about to break. Behind me, I felt Mark's steady presence, the quiet strength holding me upright. For the first time, I didn't flinch, didn't retreat. I stood there letting them see the line I had finally drawn. The cake box trembled in my mother's hands, and I knew this was only the beginning. For a moment, no one moved. The cake box shook slightly in my mother's trembling hands, her carefully painted smile flickering like a candle in the wind. My father's jaw tightened, the vein in his temple pulsing, and I just stood there, arms folded, with the weight of every insult, every overlooked effort, every child's tear pressed hard against my chest. Betty, my mother pleaded softly, her voice cracking. Don't do this, we're family. Families fight, but they forgive too. I shook my head. Families don't sit back while their grandchildren cry. Families don't let their daughters be humiliated. And families don't try to claim gifts they never even earned. Her eyes filled with tears. Please, honey, just let's go inside. Have some cake talk like we always do. Like we always do, I snapped. You mean I swallow my anger? Pretend everything's fine. And you go back to putting Hannah on her pedestal while my kids learn their worth is disposable. The words landed harder than I intended, but once they were out, I didn't regret them. My father stepped closer, his voice low, commanding. Enough. This tantrum ends now. You embarrassed us online, parading our private lives in front of strangers. You think that's what a daughter should do? The fury in me boiled over. You think what you did last night is what parents should do, I fired back. You let your grandchildren be shamed, and now you're worried about what the neighbors think. For a moment, silence stretched between us, only broken by Sophie's small voice behind me. Mommy, I don't like this. I turned, crouching to her level, brushing a strand of hair from her damp cheek. It's okay, baby. We're going inside now. I stood eyes locking with my parents. You need to leave. My mother's face crumpled completely, then tears spilling down her cheeks. Please, Betty. We can fix this. Don't do this to us. Don't shut us out. Her desperation was raw, but I'd learned long ago that tears didn't always equal truth. You already did this to yourselves. I opened the front door, ushering my family inside. My last glimpse before the door shut was of my parents standing helplessly on my porch, my father's face red with frustration, my mother clutching that ridiculous cake box like it was proof of love. The slam of the door echoed through the house, a sound that felt final. But it wasn't final, not even close, because by the next day, reinforcements had arrived. Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, a woman I spoke to maybe twice a year, showed up uninvited, her expression carefully arranged into concern. Betty, she sighed. The moment I opened the door, I'm worried about you. Your parents are devastated. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. And your father? His blood pressure is through the roof. He nearly had a heart attack yesterday. Her eyes searched mine, looking for cracks. Not my problem, I said flatly. She flinched but pressed on. They're getting older, honey. You don't want their last years filled with bitterness, do you? Let this go. The laugh that burst from me was sharp bitter. Let it go, Carol. Would you let someone tell your children their love was trash, and then just forgive them over cake? Her face twitched. Well, no. Then you understand. I stepped back, motioning to the door. Goodbye. The door shut again, firmer this time, and still the pressure mounted. Hannah's texts arrived like a flood, one after another. You're destroying this family, Jess. Mom cries herself to sleep every night. Dad's stress is your fault. Do you want him in the hospital? You're selfish. You always have been. Each ding of my phone was another attempt to pierce through my resolve. I read them at first, anger flaring with every word, but soon I stopped opening them altogether. Late one night, Mark found me standing at the window, staring out at the street, as though expecting another uninvited car to pull into the driveway. They won't stop, I whispered. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. Then we hold the line. For the girls. For us. I leaned back into him, letting his steadiness ground me. But inside, a storm still churned. Because I knew Mark was right, they wouldn't stop. Not until they forced one final confrontation. And part of me feared it would come sooner than I was ready for. After days of relentless calls and messages, I realized there was only one place left where I might find peace, the lake house. Mark agreed. We need to get away, he said one morning, his hand warm over mine. Just us, just the girls. Let's breathe for a while. So we packed bags, loaded the car, and drove out of town. The winding road through the pines felt like a balm, the lake's shimmering surface appearing at last, like a secret waiting to heal us. For 2 days, we almost believed it had worked. Emma chased dragonflies along the shore. Sophie squealed when she dipped her toes in the cold water. Mark grilled burgers on the deck while I finally let the knot in my chest begin to loosen. The air smelled of pine and charcoal laughter echoing against the water. For the first time since the disastrous dinner, I almost felt whole again. But peace never lasts with my family. It was Saturday night, close to 11, when headlights swept across the windows. Doors slammed. Voices rose. Betty, we know you're in there. Open this door right now. My heart lurched into my throat. Mark and I exchanged a look, then rushed to the girls' room. Emma and Sophie sat up in bed, wide-eyed and trembling. Mommy, who is it? Emma whispered. It's okay, baby, I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. Stay here with Daddy. I stormed to the front door, pulse pounding. I yanked it open. There they were, my parents standing in the moonlight, anger and desperation written across their faces. My father's voice was sharp. This has gone far enough. You don't get to shut us out. I blocked the doorway. You don't get to show up here uninvited and scare my children in the middle of the night. We just want to talk, my mother cried. Her hair was loose, her face lined with exhaustion. Betty, please let us in. We can't lose you. We can't lose the girls. You already did, I snapped, the moment you let Hannah humiliate them. My father's fists clenched at his sides. Do you really want to throw away decades of family over a misunderstanding? Over a few tears. Don't you dare, I hissed, my voice shaking now with rage. Don't you dare reduce what you did to a few tears. My daughters cried themselves to sleep because of you, because of Hannah. And you sat there. You chose silence. Behind me, I felt Mark's presence steady but ready. I could hear the girls whimpering softly from their room, frightened by the voices outside. I stepped closer to the threshold, my body a wall between them and my children. If you don't leave, I will call the police. My mother gasped as though I'd just slapped her. Betty, you wouldn't... Try me. I cut her off. You've pushed me past every line I ever thought I had. I will protect my family, even if it means protecting them from you. For a moment, the only sound was the lapping of the lake against the dock, steady, unbothered, as if mocking the chaos spilling across the shore. Finally, my father's shoulders slumped, the fight draining from his eyes. You'll regret this, he muttered, voice hoarse. No, I said, my voice like ice. For once I won't. I shut the door firmly, my hands trembling but my back straight. I pressed my forehead against the wood, listening as their voices faded, their car engine starting the night, returning to stillness. It took over an hour to calm the girls. Emma clung to me, whispering. Grandpa sounded so mad. Sophie refused to sleep until I sat beside her, stroking her hair until her breaths finally evened out. Later, lying in bed beside Mark, I stared out the window. The moon's reflection rippled across the lake, calm and untouchable. My chest rose and fell with each shaky breath. They won't stop, I whispered. Mark kissed my temple. Then we'll stop them, together. And in that moment, I knew the family I had always longed for wasn't the one I was born into. It was the one I'd built with Mark, with Emma and Sophie. This lake house wasn't my parents' dream anymore. It was ours. The water whispered outside, steady and eternal. For the first time, I felt it was whispering to me, you've crossed the point of no return. And strangely, that realization felt like freedom. Time has a strange way of softening sharp edges. Weeks passed, then months. The calls grew fewer, the texts less relentless. My parents must have finally realized I wasn't bluffing. At first, the quiet felt unnatural, like standing in a room after a storm when your ears are still ringing. I almost expected to hear another car in the driveway or see Hannah's name flash across my phone. But the silence held. Packages began arriving instead. Toys for the girls, flowers for me, a new fishing rod for Mark. Each box had the same return address, my parents' house. I didn't open a single one. I scribbled, "Return to sender," and left them for the delivery driver to take back. Mark would watch me with quiet approval. You're stronger than they ever gave you credit for. And slowly I started to believe him. Through the grapevine, I heard they weren't struggling. My parents had money tucked away all along. The monthly $500 I'd sent them for years, unnecessary. a performance I had played the lead in without realizing the script was rigged. As for Hannah, her texts eventually stopped. Rumors trickled in that she'd found another way to fund her courses. Good for her, I thought, with a bitterness I didn't bother to hide. Maybe earning something herself would teach her the value of it. Then one afternoon, an email arrived with the subject line, "My wedding invitation." I sat staring at it for a long time. Hannah wrote that she wanted me, Mark, and the girls there. She claimed she wasn't asking for money, not even for gifts, just our presence. She even apologized the words, stiff, but there. For a fleeting moment, my heart betrayed me. I imagined walking into a decorated hall, watching my sister say vows, the girls tossing flower petals down the aisle. I imagined forgiveness. But then Sophie's small voice echoed in my memory. "Mommy, why didn't Aunt Hannah like our presents?" I closed the laptop. Days later, I deleted the email without replying. Some doors once shut shouldn't be reopened. The unexpected gift of closing that chapter was the space it created for another. Mark's parents, Susan and Jim, stepped into our lives in ways I hadn't expected. They'd always been kind, but I hadn't realized how much I'd kept them at arm's length while chasing my own parents' approval. Now I leaned into them. When they first heard what had happened, Susan's face had crumpled. "I can't imagine treating my grandchildren that way," she whispered, pulling Emma and Sophie into her arms. Jim clapped Mark on the shoulder, pride shining in his eyes. "You did right by your family, son." The lake house, once intended as my parents' dream, became a gathering place for theirs. Susan baked pies with Sophie in the kitchen while Flower dusted their cheeks. Jim taught Emma how to cast a fishing line off the dock, his laughter booming each time she reeled in even the smallest catch. One weekend, Mark's brother and his family came filling the house with noise and joy. Kids raced along the deck, grown-ups sat around the fire pit, and for the first time I realized this was what family should feel like: effortless, safe, real. I stood on the porch that evening, watching the girls chase fireflies with their cousins. The lake shimmered under the twilight sky. And I thought of my parents, of the version of them I'd always carried in my heart. The supportive, loving parents who celebrated every achievement, who cherished their grandchildren's gifts. The version that never really existed. The ache of missing them would still creep in sometimes. I'd hear a song my dad loved on the radio, or see a little trinket my mom might have bought for the girls, and feel a stab of longing. But I knew better now. I wasn't missing them. I was missing the fantasy I'd built around them. As the fireflies blinked in the dark and Emma's laughter rang out across the yard, I felt the truth settle into me, like the gentle lap of water against the dock. I hadn't lost my family. I had finally found it. Will I reconcile with my parents and sister someday? Maybe. But if that day comes, it won't be with illusions. It will only be if they truly change, if they finally understand the damage they caused, and show they're willing to rebuild, not just sweep it under the rug. Until then, my loyalty is here, to Mark, to Emma and Sophie, to the people who show love with open hands, not clenched fists. The lake house gleamed behind me, its windows glowing warm against the night. Not theirs. Not anymore. Ours. And that was enough.